Welcome to CompuScholar's Professional Development webinar for November and December of 2025. Today we're going to be talking about differentiated instruction and student accommodations. To get started, let's define these terms, at least in our context. Both differentiated instruction and student accommodations are very broad and deep subjects, but we're going to simplify them today and term differentiated instruction to mean customizing the student experience to match student learning preferences. So if the student wants to learn in a certain way or in a certain format or learn about certain topics, then we'll call that differentiated instruction. Student accommodations is closely related, and that means customizing the student experience to match the student's capabilities. So if a student is capable of doing more advanced work or more basic work, we want to have the ability to tune the system so that students of all capabilities can still be successful. So today we'll start off talking about special accommodations for students. We'll review the differentiated instruction options within the system. We'll give you a brief reminder about accessibility and ESL support. That's all kind of under the differentiated instruction umbrella. And then point you to a differentiated instruction guide that we've recently published. So there are a number of ways to do special or student accommodations, and these are basically changes to the system for students that need extra help. And one classic way to do that on quizzes and tests is to allow for extra time or to allow for extra attempts. So if you are in a classroom where you would give your typical students a certain amount of time, you can always allow extra time on a quiz or a test. Also, the system will allow you to configure the number of attempts for quizzes and tests, and you might choose to override that for some students to give them additional attempts. In a similar manner, the online auto-graded projects allow students to do a certain number of previews to run the test cases and see what their grades would be. And this number of previews can be configured both on the classroom basis and then overridden for specific students if you want to give certain students additional numbers of previews. Some of the assignments are teacher graded, and there are certainly options for teachers to modify their grading rubrics or their grading patterns based on student capabilities. And in some cases, we might give you specific guidance for additional accommodations within specific activities. Let's switch over to our system, and I'll show you where to find all of these options. Okay, I'm logged into a typical teacher dashboard, and I'll go ahead and click on one of my classrooms that I've set up. And the first thing I'll show you is this Configure Course menu over here on the left. And I will note that this menu is only available if you have purchased a dedicated copy of the classroom for your traditional classroom use. If you have an individual family or homeschool subscription, then this Configure Course link will not be available, and you have some other options. But for most teachers, you'll use this Configure Course link. And both for quizzes and exams, you have the option to change the number of attempts, and this is on a classroom basis. So once you set the number of attempts on a classroom basis, you can then click on Manage My Logins, select a specific student, and click Manage User. And we'll scroll down and we'll see there's now the ability in our system, this is fairly recent, to override those numbers for a specific student. So if you want to give certain students more attempts, you can do that here on the quizzes and on the exams. So when you make your changes here for specific students, I'll just click the Save Changes button. Now let's go into a specific chapter, and we'll click on one of the quizzes and click on Settings. And we'll scroll down and look at the timing. By default, the timing options are turned off, but you can always come in here and turn them on if you want to open and close the quizzes and tests at specific times or give specific time limits. And this is on a classroom basis, so the changes that you make here are on a classroom basis. Once you save those changes to the overall quiz, if you want to override it for specific students, we can click the More and then Overrides button. We'll add a user override. We'll select a student here in the search box. So we've selected the student. And now we can enable or disable overrides for specific things. So if we want to give additional time, we could do that here. This is another way to override the number of attempts on a specific quiz. You can do that here. So let me just give you an example. And we'll click Save. So you can see we've added this override. In this case, it's the number of attempts, but you could override the timing as well. And if you want to get rid of that override, we'll just click the Delete button. Okay, so it's very easy for quizzes and tests to manipulate the timing of those things so that you can give accommodations to students based on timing or the number of attempts. Let's go back out to the course and we'll take a look at the online assignments. Again, we'll go into one of the chapters and we'll click on one of these online assignments. There are different kinds of assignments within the system, and we're talking specifically about the online assignments. In other cases, there are file upload assignments where students will work offline and upload files to the system. So right now we're focused just on the online assignments. So we'll click on this assignment link. We have a number of buttons at the top, and this accommodations button is new, so let's click on that. And you'll have a list of all the students in your class here. Right now I only have one student, and this allows you to override the maximum number of previews. So again, a preview in an online assignment is the ability to run the test cases and present the grade that you would get if you submit, and teachers can configure the number of previews that's available both on that configure course screen as well as here. So if you do the preview configuration on the main configure course screen, that will affect your entire classroom. If you come in here, you can do an override for a specific student, and that will impact the number of previews that student gets. So by changing the number of attempts on a quiz or test or the number of previews on an auto-graded assignment, that basically gives all students the chance to complete the same level of work. They just might need extra attempts or extra time to complete that work. Now, in some courses, the assignments are mostly auto-graded. In other courses, the teacher has significant grading responsibilities for those chapter activities. I'm going to scroll down and find one of those teacher-graded chapter activities. And we'll click on the Activity Solution Guide. Now, in all cases within these teacher-graded solutions, we certainly encourage teachers to tailor their grading to meet these student capabilities, and so that's pretty much a given in all courses where teachers are able to assign their own grade. Whether you're typing in a direct numeric grade or you're moving a slider around on a scale, you can always tailor your grading to meet these student capabilities. In some cases, we also have this yellow student accommodations box where we've added some additional tips. So if you want to provide some extra help for students as they're doing these teacher-graded activities, then we'll have some suggestions here for student accommodations. So you might find these yellow student accommodation boxes again in the chapter activity solution guides for the courses where we support that type of accommodation. Okay, let's turn our attention to differentiated instruction, and this includes ways to challenge your advanced students. There are many ways to provide differentiated instruction, and one popular way is to present the material in multiple formats. So to support differentiated instruction, you don't want to be just text-based or just video-based or always do everything the same way. So all of our courses provide multimedia instructional content. This includes the lesson videos and the lesson text pages. All of our courses also have the ability to be translated into multiple language. So again, this falls into the student preferences category, where if a student wants to learn a certain way in a certain language, then we do support those type of language translations. And we'll talk more about that in just a moment. And then we do have optional and supplemental lessons as well. So you can differentiate the student's experience based on what they're learning in addition to how they're learning. So many of our courses will have those chapters towards the end of the course that are marked as optional or chapters that are supplemental. And there are plenty of enrichment topics down in those later chapters where teachers can direct your advanced students or students that are curious about specific subjects to go ahead and consume that optional content. And if we go back here to an example course and we take a peek inside one of the chapters, most of you are probably familiar with our video and lesson text pattern. So we have the optional instructional videos and then the lesson text pages. So the videos are, again, optional. They are 3 to 5 minute introductions to the lesson text. They are popular with your audiovisual students, so kids that really like to learn with some sort of live narration and animation or screencast recording. We have these videos as a way to kind of get them familiar with the subject matter. And then you have the lesson text as the required reading. If you have students that simply prefer to read the lesson text and do the hands-on exercises, then they can skip the videos completely. Let's go back out here to the main table of contents, and we'll scroll down towards the bottom. And you can see in this particular course there are plenty of chapters that are marked as optional, as well as some supplemental chapters down towards the bottom. So again, plenty of optional content and supplemental content in most of our courses, and that really lets you tailor the instructional experience to the interests of your specific students. Okay, so just as a reminder, a big part of supporting differentiated instruction and student accommodations is the topic of accessibility. And this basically refers to making content available to those with different physical needs. So whether you need to have things read aloud to you or have special contrasts and highlighting and that sort of thing, all of the access to online materials is supported by certain standards, WCAG 2.1 and Section 508. So our online system does support these standards for accessibility. And some of those features are turned on when you select an accessibility user profile option. So I'll show you where to find that in just a moment. And we do have a full webinar on this subject, so I won't spend a lot of time on it today. You can always take a look at our webinars page and check out our February 2024 webinar for more details on accessibility. But for now, in brief, I'm going to show you where to find the accessibility settings. I'll toggle down my profile, click Edit, and I can change my theme from default to accessible and click Update. Now if we go into a course, the color themes are a little bit different, so we now have high contrast settings in some cases. When you click on items or you tab around and select items, you'll see highlights and that sort of thing. So just some extra help in terms of accessibility once you turn on that accessibility profile. And again, if you want more information on accessibility, then check out our webinar on our webinars page. And the last major support for differentiated instruction is the ability to support ESL students. So students that don't have English as a native language, again, this falls under the broad category of how do you want to learn, what is your preference for learning, and if they prefer to learn in their own native language. We do support translating all of our online text-based content into any language. You can do this with freely available browser tools that are available for all modern web browsers. One example tool is Google Translate, but there are many others as well. So that works for all of the text-based content. The instructional videos do have both English and Spanish captions as well as narration text, and you can always translate that narration text to other languages as well if you like. And just like the accessibility, we do have a full webinar on support for ESL students, so I'd encourage you to check out our November-December 2023 webinar for more details, but I'll give you a quick demo right now. Right, let's just open up a lesson text page. And in my particular case, I'm using Google Chrome. So I've already enabled Google Translate and told it I want Spanish as my preferred language. And so on any lesson text page, we can simply right click and say Translate to Spanish. And you get that instant Spanish translation. So the great advantage to this is that you don't have to buy a separate edition in advance. You don't have to pigeonhole your students into a specific language. The students themselves can control exactly how they want to consume that content simply by setting up the language translation and then right click and translating into the language of their choice. Now we have created a complete PDF guide to differentiated instruction, and that guide has much of the same information as we've presented here today, but you might find it more convenient, so let me show you where to find that within the course. Here in our online system, if you go to Help and then select Guide to Differentiated Instruction, this is our Differentiated Instruction and Student Accommodations Guide. Again, it will cover many of the topics we've talked about today. So I encourage you to take a look at this guide if you need a reminder or a refresher on how to do some of the things that we've talked about. Thank you for watching. As always, we're happy to answer questions. You can contact us by phone, by email, or through our website.